were still handcuffed. Cody Howard did a faceplant, losing his shoe
And he's off. New dashcam video showing what appears to be an escapee running from the DeSoto County Courthouse.
Watch the two guys in the upper right corner. Instead of following orders to go back to jail, they head for the door.
This is Larry Darnell Gordon, an inmate brought into the Marin County Courthouse, St. Joseph, Michigan. Gordon, 44, was facing charges that could lock him away for life: criminal conduct, kidnapping, and assault. He had a history of break-ins and weapons possession. The day was July 11th, 2016. Inside courtroom 315, a routine hearing was about to end. The judge ruled Gordon wasn't needed further and ordered that he be escorted back to his holding cell. No one in that room knew that Gordon had already made a decision: get free or die trying. Those words were later found in a letter he wrote from jail. As deputies led him out to the hallway, Gordon acted. A man is seen running across the camera towards Gordon as he tries to dispossess Deputy Atterbury off camera. That is Security Director Joseph Zangaro. But Gordon didn't stop there. As the shot sent the people in the courtroom running for safety, Security Director Joseph Zangaro sprinted toward the hallway, unlocking the door leading to the holding area. There was another gunshot off camera, and he never made it through. It was pandemonium and deadly shots that meant death. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the law wasted no time before it was soon on his trail. Gordon bolted. But the officers were on him now, and this is when Gordon does the unthinkable. He takes 8 hostages. He even uses one of them, a woman, as a shield. But then, two hostages break free. Gordon fires again, and then the law closes in. When the officers finally reach Gordon, he's down. For Larry Darnell Gordon, his escape attempt ended the only way it could, with him fulfilling his own prophecy, die trying. But what about a man who ended a judge's life and went on a run? This is Brian G. Nichols, 33 years old, standing trial for and false imprisonment inside the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia. He wasn't new to the justice system. His first trial had ended in a hung jury. But on the morning of March 11, 2005, he was back for retrial. And something was different. Moments before, he had made threats. He told inmates he wouldn't go down easy. In fact, shanks were found on him, and the courthouse took necessary precautions.
Sheriff's Department is in charge of courtroom security, and they were immediately receptive to our requests and to Judge Barnes' request to put more deputies in there, and they did. They put 2 additional deputies in there during the entire proceeding.
But that wasn't enough. Nichols was being escorted to court when, all of a sudden, he attacked Deputy Cynthia Hall. He beat her viciously, took her sidearm, and left her motionless. She would later survive, but never fully recover. But Nichols was not done. He forced his way into Judge Roland Barnes's courtroom. Witnesses said he moved with purpose. No shouting, no hesitation, Just walk straight in. Then he raised the gun and fired. Judge Barnes collapsed behind the bench. Court reporter Julie Brandow was shot next. A split second later, Nichols turned toward the doors. He knew what he'd done, but he wasn't done yet. As officers scrambled upstairs, Nichols slipped out through a stairwell. A responding deputy, Sergeant Hoyt Teasley, met him near an exit. Then,
they told us to get to the edge of the sidewalk, and I just peered around and I saw him collapse. He was sort of standing when I saw him, but he collapsed.
After that, he ran.
I was entering the garage, got my ticket, and thought I heard shots. Didn't pay a whole lot of attention, went on to turn to go up the ramp, and I saw a guy run past me. We started hearing all of the sirens. Got to the top and got parked, and immediately went to look over the wall to see what was going on, and that's when we saw the sheriff down. That's when it kind of hit me. That probably was a guy that ran past me.
He was armed, mobile, and unpredictable, and the manhunt began. But hours later, about 15 miles away, he broke into a newly built home, killing David Wilhelm, an off-duty ICE agent. He took his gun, badge, and truck. By now, the police knew this was a dangerous case.
This person is very violent. He's taken 3 individuals' lives. And so we have to assume that he's very, very dangerous. And that's what we're going to continue to assume until he turns himself in. Because this person has a weapon. He's already demonstrated by killing 3 individuals and shooting another person or pistol whipping another individual. And so we're not going to stop until we, exhaust all of our lead.
And then in the early hours of March 12th, Nichols forced his way into an apartment in Duluth, Georgia. The tenant, Ashley Smith, 26, was alone. He tied her up and held her hostage. But that was not before he told her who he was and how he'd killed people. But then he also said he was tired. But what was Nichols really running from? What spooked him?
Not guilty on these charges.
His possible penalty, he was accused of 2 7 deadlies, and they carry a potential life imprisonment. He was also charged with possessing a firearm during a felony, which would have been an additional 5 years.
Who else could he possibly be looking for?
Well, I'd say this, Judge Barnes did nothing, in our estimation, to insult this man. The court reporter did nothing. This deputy who was shot at the end was just somebody
If these people did nothing, why did Nichols purposefully shoot them?
We think what set him off is that he was coming back a second time. I think he probably realized, in fact, he actually said to Gail, you're doing a better job this time. I think that he realized that he might get convicted this time.
Yesterday, as Mr. Howard said, he did look at me and say, "You're doing a much better job." He's always come across as very cocky, but again, there was no evidence.
It was Ashley Smith that finally convinced Nichols to turn himself in. According to her,
I read to him from The Purpose-Driven Life. He asked me what my purpose was. I told him, maybe it's to help you.
She said he cried, then let her go. Smith ran outside and called 911. Within minutes, the SWAT trucks arrived. Nichols surrendered quietly. No more gunfire. But by then, 4 people were already dead. Judge Barnes, Julie Brandow, Sergeant Teasley, and Agent Wilhelm. Nichols was convicted on 54 counts and sentenced to multiple life terms without parole. Brian Nichols wreaked havoc in court just for his freedom. But what about James McClain, who kidnapped hostages from the court, all for freedom? This is James McClain, who was being tried for attacking a prison officer. Judge Gerald Hyde was presiding over the case of James McClain, who was on trial for assaulting a corrections officer at the Marin County Civic Center in San Rafael, California. What followed next was simply terrifying.
And I was here maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and the whole group of hostages and suspects, with the exception of one, went out through this door here.
The accused, James McClain, a San Quentin inmate, had stabbed a prison guard while serving a term in prison. 2 other inmates, Rachel McGee and William Christmas, were called in as witnesses that fateful day. However, everything all started with George L. Jackson getting into trouble.
Mrs. Jackson, how long has your son been in prison?
Since 1961.
How did that all start?
He was with a fellow who arrived at a service station in Los Angeles. They were in his old car together, and According to a witness, a young man who worked at the filling station, he said that this man came in with a gun and robbed him, that he didn't see my son at all.
With George Jackson in prison, the dominoes started to fall. On January 13, 1970, 3 black prisoners at Soledad Prison in Monterey County were shot by a white guard during a fighting incident. The shootings were ruled justifiable homicide. However, just after that, a white guard was killed in what authorities believed was retaliation. 3 black inmates were charged with his murder. After they were charged with murder, the 3 black prisoners became known as the Soledad Brothers. Their case became a movement cause among radical groups here. George L. Jackson was among the Soledad Brothers, and reports say his brother was passionate about getting him freed. August 7th, 1970 was the fateful day. Inside the Marin County Civic Center, Judge Haley was presiding over the trial of James McClain. Unknown to anyone, the next few hours were going to make national headlines. Jonathan Jackson, just 17 years old and brother of imprisoned Black Panther, George Jackson, entered the courtroom with a long raincoat despite the summer heat. He was carrying 3 guns, all registered to Angela Davis, a UCLA professor and Black Panther supporter. Jackson sat with the spectators for a few moments watching the proceeding, and suddenly...
And looking to the spectator side of the courtroom, saw a tall, light-complected Negro with bushy hair pointing a handgun at the back of the neck of Lieutenant Dixon of San Quentin Correctional Force. Everybody hit the floor except some of the lady jurors. This stranger came forward and passed the handgun to the defendant McClain, who put the gun on Judge Haley.
The operation freed 3 other inmates apart from John McClain, who was standing trial.
The intervener withdrew from the bag, a large bag, an automatic rifle, covered all the correctional personnel, and at gunpoint they were forced to unshackle the witness McGee, who had been on the witness stand. McGee was then armed too, and I think it was McGee who was sent to the holding cell to liberate the 3 remaining witnesses who were under guard in the holding cell.
The attackers forced Judge Haley to call the sheriff, trying to negotiate the release of the Soledad brothers. Road flares were taped to Haley's neck, but then replaced by a sawed-off shotgun taped under his chin. Then the group took 4 hostages: Judge Haley, Deputy District Attorney Gary Thomas, and 2 jurors. They forced everyone into a rented Ford van and drove toward the US 101 freeway, demanding the release of George Jackson and the other Soledad brothers. The moment they left the Civic Center, the situation became a full-scale emergency.
I secured a shotgun from one of our units that was on the street and advised him again to relay via radio to the office just precisely what we had, and advising him again to close off the area.
As the kidnappers tried to escape, McClain fired at officers from the moving van. The police returned fire. Judge Haley suffered fatal wounds from both the shotgun taped to his neck and a pistol shot to the chest. But he was not the only victim. Jonathan Jackson, Christmas, and McClain all died in the shootout. Deputy District Attorney Gary Thomas was paralyzed for life by a bullet through his spine. Juror Maria Elena Graham was shot in the arm. The only surviving attacker, Rachel McGee, was seriously wounded. Angela Davis, whose guns were used in the attack, became the subject of a nationwide manhunt. She fled California, using disguises and false identification. The FBI finally captured her in New York City on October 13, 1970. Davis was charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, and homicide. After a highly publicized trial, she was found not guilty on all counts in 1972. Rachel McGee pleaded guilty to aggravated kidnapping, receiving a life sentence. He was finally released in July 2023 after 67 years in prison. The Marin County Civic Center shooting wasn't the end. The Weather Underground was formed in response to what they considered police brutality. Their activism involved planning bombs at specific public places. The bombings continued throughout 1971. They placed 2 bombs at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Both of them exploded on March 1st. After the mysterious murder of George Jackson in August, the group attacked 3 offices of the California prison system. The violence surrounding the Soledad brothers case continued for years, even after Judge Harold had paid for it with his life. McLean lost his life trying to escape from the court. But what about an inmate who was caught, not by the cops, but by a sitting judge? This is Tanner Jacobson, and following behind is Cody Howard. They are in court for a hearing of first-degree trafficking in stolen property and third-degree theft. It was supposed to be an ordinary sentencing morning inside the Grays Harbor County Courthouse, Montesano, Washington. But just as the hearing was wrapping up, this happened.
Watch the 2 guys in the upper right corner. Instead of following orders to go back to jail, they head for the door.
Without warning, the 2 inmates moved. Cody Howard, Tanner Jacobson. They lunged from the defense table, shackles clanging like alarm bells. The deputy nearest them barely twitched before they were out the door. With the entire court stunned, the judge, R.W. Buzzard, reacted.
To jail, they head for the door. Judge R.W. Buzzard leaps into action.
Didn't know what to think, and by the time they hit the door, I realized there's nobody in between them and the street.
And just as they streaked across the hallway, Cody's nightmare happened.
Both men were still handcuffed. Cody Howard did a faceplant, losing a shoe and falling behind.
And Cody now found himself behind. With the judge in pursuit, the 2 men tore into the corridor in great haste.
Both went barreling down 3 flights of stairs with Judge Buzzard making up ground.
The chase continued with the judge hot on the heels of the escaped inmates.
And once I got into the stairwell, I knew I was going to be able to catch the one that was just in front of me because I immediately started gaining on him.
The turning point came at the exit.
By the time they reach the emergency exit, Jacobson makes it to the street, but the judge nabs Howard. Jacobson didn't get far, arrested a few blocks away.
Jacobson made it outside, but Howard was not so lucky. Lewis County Judge Buzzard nabbed him just at the door. Jacobson managed to make it a few blocks shackled before he was caught by authorities and quickly rearrested. Buzzard said he was shocked at first when the inmates streaked off. It was only when they got to the door that he realized that there was no one between them and the street. That spurred him into action. And that 30-second blur of panic and pursuit, captured by a courthouse camera, became one of the wildest courtroom moments ever caught on tape. Sheriff Rob Snaza says,
"These things don't happen very often."
The 2 inmates didn't make it too far before getting caught. But what about Justin Patrick, who tore down the courtroom hallway with the same level of desperation?
This is Justin Patrick, standing trial in Humboldt County, California in September 2016. The charges included assault with intent to false imprisonment and other related counts. Prior to that, Justin Patrick had walked up to a woman in the library and rubbed his while looking over her shoulder. He was told to stay away from campus for at least a week. However, later that same day, he approached a student at a laundromat on H Street in Arcata and pulled down her pants. He was promptly arrested.
It was supposed to be an ordinary pretrial hearing inside the Humboldt County Superior Court. But then, just outside the courtroom, this happened. Justin burst outside the courtroom, hesitated a little, then took off. But he was not about to make it away from the court premises without any opposition. Bailiffs and deputies scrambled after him. Even more bailiffs joined. This is what happened from a clearer angle. Patrick burst through the courtroom doors, hesitated a little, then chose his direction. He had made it a few feet down the hall when he bumped into a wall of bailiffs who were coming after him from the other direction. Yet he continued struggling, making it difficult for the 2 bailiffs to hold you down. More help came. And in no time, the escaped inmate was contained. The escape attempt added a new charge of escape to his record. In July 2017, Judge Robert Crone handed down the sentence: 4 years in state prison for assault with intent to rape, plus 1 year for the escape, totaling 5 years. However, Patrick received 552 days credit for time served, including months in a state mental hospital after being ruled temporarily incompetent to stand trial. So this is Stephen Graham Russell Jr., 27, from South Haven, Mississippi. He was in court at the DeSoto County Courthouse in Hernando, facing sentencing for fentanyl trafficking. It was supposed to be a routine hearing. But then, this happened.
And he's off. New dashcam video showing what appears to be an escapee running from the DeSoto County Courthouse.
As deputies escorted Russell from the courtroom, he suddenly claimed to be experiencing a medical emergency. But as they paused to assist, he bolted and was out of the courtroom in no time. But that wasn't all.
To his car, climbing in and waiting to drive off as cops run right past him.
Handcuffed but determined, Russell sprinted across the courthouse square. He reached his car, climbed in, and started the engine. The cops in pursuit all ran right by, not knowing that he was hiding in there. Then,
he takes off, an officer clues in on who he is and races after him.
As he drove off down Commerce Street, he was quickly spotted.
Action News 5 has not been able to confirm the source of the video, but it looks like it was taken from a camera mounted on a bus or a large truck.
The pursuit was short-lived. Russell was stopped a few blocks away and arrested without further incident. Russell had been out on bond before the hearing. He had been convicted of trafficking fentanyl, a potent synthetic opioid linked to numerous overdose deaths. Russell now faces additional charges for felony escape, adding to his original sentence. But watch this next inmate on how he escaped seamlessly through a blind spot. This is Gerald Hyde, 24, from Kennewick, Washington. He was in court at the Benton County Superior Court in Prosser, facing sentencing for methamphetamine possession. It was supposed to be a routine hearing. While he waited with other inmates for his day in court, this happened. As deputies escorted Hyde and the other inmates from the courtroom, he suddenly darted into a blind spot. A split-second lapse in attention, and he was gone. Hyde bolted through the courtroom, but realized he needed to do something. He quickly pulled off his prison wear before slipping out through the courtroom door. With his courtroom uniform, he hid his handcuff and quickly hurried through the courtroom hallway. And there, he did something else. He ditched his prison-issued footwear and ran through the courtroom before he slipped into the streets. Hyde was on the run for just 2 hours before being found at a friend's apartment a few miles away and taken back into custody. He was charged with second-degree escape. Hyde represented himself in court, arguing he hadn't escaped from a detention facility since he was inside the courthouse. The jury deliberated for just 13 minutes before convicting him. Hyde was sentenced to 2 years and 2 months in prison for the escape. Gerald's dramatic escape attempt ended quickly. But what about Ronard Neil, whose escape attempt was a desperate move rather than a subtle one? This is Ronard Neil, 30, of Fayetteville, Georgia. He was inside the Fayette County Courthouse for a hearing related to charges of drug possession and obstruction of an officer, a standard proceeding before the judge. It was supposed to be a routine day in court. The day before, on September 24, 2019, Neil did not show up for his case, and the doctor ordered for him to be taken into custody. But Neil had other ideas. Without warning, Neil bolted from the deputy and stumbled into an adjoining courtroom. He dashed through the door after stumbling through a crowd of baffled onlookers.
Neil escapes down a stairwell toward the first floor exit.
And finally, Neil could almost taste freedom. But freedom was short-lived. He disappeared through the entrance with the officers in hot pursuit. But within minutes, Fayette County deputies tackled him near a side exit and placed him back in custody. The scuffle left one deputy with minor injuries. Neil was charged with escape, obstruction, and injury to a peace officer, on top of his existing charges. And what began as an ordinary hearing became one of Georgia's most chaotic courthouse moments ever caught on camera. Sheriff Barry Babb later said that improved security protocols were put in place immediately after the incident, including additional deputies during in-custody hearings and reinforced restraints for defendants appearing before the bench. After that attempt, Ronard Neil faced felony obstruction, simple battery, escape, and interference with government property, along with a bench warrant. He pleaded guilty to all charges,